Good morning. I'm Nenow. I'm a Word of Faith member, and I'm privileged and blessed to be here this morning with you all and get to share. It's always a joy to share because you don't realize how much of your life is important to the people, to see what's happened to you, what's gone on in your life, and how you've been through the journey and how you've gotten from this point to that point. And so this morning, I'd just like to share a little bit more of that in my life and just give you some, hopefully, keys for your own life, because it is important. I'm going to start with Hosea 4:6. It says, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because you've rejected knowledge, I will reject you, that you shall be no priest to me, seeing that you have forgotten the law of your God. I will also forget your children." The devil's plan is pretty simple. He wants to destroy every one of us. He wants to destroy us because of the gift of God that's inside of us. He wants to remove that, before it even has an opportunity. And that's like in Revelations, it talks about the devil positioned himself before the birth, and he positioned himself to make sure he was there to try to again steal, but he was unable. So many times we allow, the rebellion that's in our lives, to steal from us, and that's the devil doing nothing more than trying to destroy that gift, and the Israelites, they were a very rebellious people. I mean, you think about it, they had everything. I mean, he allowed them to go through. They escaped from Egypt. They went through the Red Sea. Water was provided by striking the rock. Manna fell from heaven. They were in a desert for 40 years. It doesn't say they went down to the local haberdashery and got their clothing, I mean, obviously, he took care of them at every step, even though in the midst of the rebellion and their grumbling and all the different things. And so much of it, truthfully, is where we've come. I mean, God loves us so much. He endures us to try to bring us to a point. And really, ultimately, it is his power, his keeping power that wants to be there, that wants to help us. And it's always there. His angels, it's the Holy Spirit. It's always there trying to draw us, pull us, move us into positions where ultimately we get to really know what the knowledge is, to know who Jesus really is. And we no longer are then lacking the very knowledge that allowed us. We no longer are forgetting the laws of God or the ways of God. He's allowing us to begin to walk in those ways and begin to see it. But I want to go to Numbers 11, and this talks about the whole situation where the Israelites were at that point in time, and it says, "And the people grumbled and deplored their hardships, which was evil in the ears of the Lord. And when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them and devoured those in outlying parts of the camp. The people cried to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire subsided. He called the name of the place Tabereth, burning, because the fire of the Lord burning among them. And the mixed multitude among them, the rabble who followed Israel from Egypt, began to lust greatly for familiar dainty foods. And the Israelites wept again and said, 'Who will give us meat to eat?' And they said, 'We remember the fish we ate freely in Egypt, and without cost, the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now our soul is dried up. There is nothing at all in the way of food to be seen but this manna.'" I mean, God gave everything. He gave everything. And that's what he's done for us. He's given us everything. You go I mean, I go to a church where I get fed regularly. I mean, spiritual food is always there. I mean, it's your choice, what you're going to do with it. It can build you up. It can nourish you. It can bring you to a point where you really, understand what's going on in your life, and it helps you to come out. But so many people in the world, and so many people even, in the church that I attend, they reject it so much, and they became, I remember when I first came to the church and, we're trying to deal, with my own rebellion. I said something to one of the ministers that was helping me. I said, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the youth, as they begin to grow up here, and if they start to reject some of this truth, they're going to have a whole other rebellion, and that's really in the end what you begin to see out there in the church today. Children that have been brought up in the church, just defiantly standing against God now, just rejecting everything their grandparents, great-grandparents, parents brought them to, just rejecting it and not allowing it to be part of their life. And so, but yet in the midst of it, God's keeping power is there. He's there for them if they want it. Philippians says, I'm convinced and I'm confident of this one thing, that he that has begun a good work in you will continue to perfect it and complete it until the day of Jesus Christ, the time of his return. Well, that's what's happened in my life. I see it. When I was young, I was so rebellious. I think now, I look around now and everybody's into the extreme. They want to take a selfie on top of the largest building and hang out as far as they can go. They want to jump this way. They want to jump off bridges. They want to do all kind of crazy things. Jump out of airplanes or jump back into airplanes, and you sit there and you say, well, that's crazy. And then I look back and think of all the crazy things I was doing. And knowing all the crazy things I did, yet knowing where he's brought me to today, I can say there is a strong keeping power of God that's there. I took hundreds of trips of LSD. I went right to the brink, of insanity so many times, and tried not to step over, realizing that so many people made the step. They stepped over the line and they perished. He destroyed them because of their lack of knowledge, the devil. It was the lack of the knowledge of God in their lives. And they were trying to fill it in whatever way they can, trying to feel that, extreme rush of doing something that was far beyond anything anybody else could do. Why? Because there's a void in their lives. It wasn't being filled, and they wanted more. And that was my life. I would take my motorcycle out in Hawaii, and I would drive as fast. I lived in Hawaii for several years. I'd drive as fast. I'd be on drugs, and I'm driving the motorcycle all through the hills of Hawaii, all down around these curvy curves and right on the edge, and there's 1,000-foot drop-offs, and at the time, you almost seemed like you're invincible. Nothing's going to touch you. You don't realize at the time, God is protecting you at every step. He's holding you up because he knows what he wants to do with you. He knows what the gift of God is for you. He knows that someday I could be talking here to many of you, trying to share all these things that were crazy in my life. So about the things you're doing that are crazy in your life, might change. It was, so many crazy things, that he had done. I remember, though, one of the most powerful things that actually happened for me, I was traveling with a friend of mine, Andy Kidd, and we were in the music business at that time. And we were in Europe, and we had just gone and saw an artist friend Well, actually, we were just gone. I think we just negotiated a contract or something with him. And we left, it was in Sweden, and we left Sweden pretty late at night. And we're driving down the roads, down into Germany. We're going to go to Germany to visit another friend of mine. And when we hit the roads were like sheer ice, and you begin to see all the cars just, all over the place. And we did get to Germany, Castle, Germany that night, and we were safe. And again, God took care of us. He made sure, that we made it. But yet, even in that, we didn't realize that how it had delayed us. We didn't get there on the time that we thought we should get there. We got there pretty late. And so we had to catch a ferry. We had to drive from Germany into Belgium. And we had to catch a ferry. So we drove, as fast as we could to get there, and when we got there, we missed the ferry. And we thought, okay, what is that? You missed the ferry, and here it is, so I guess we're going to just have to stay, that was our plans, but I guess we're going to have to spend the night, in Belgium. So we had a hotel. We woke up the next morning, and Andy called his brother. And his brother said, Andy, I am so glad to hear your voice. And Andy's like, what are you talking about? Glad to hear my voice. He said, well, the ferry that you were supposed to get went out into the English Channel and it sank. And 193 people died. That was in 1987. And it was supposed to leave from Zeebrugge, Belgium. We missed it. Why did we miss it? We missed it because we were late over here. We missed it because God, in his power, protected us. And it was a very strong wake-up call, for me to begin to see, that keeping power of God in my life, and throughout my life, I've watched it and watched it and watched it. I've seen. I when I lived in Hawaii, I would go out in the waves, and surf surf myself. I'd be out there early in the morning. I never thought anything of any of this. I never thought I could die. I just thought that, hey, this is something I want to do. This is something enjoyable. And you're sitting out on those reefs and you just, now I see different stories about shark attacks, this and all these things, people drowning. And I think, how much of an idiot was I, But yet how much was God there for me, protecting me, watching over me and seeing, that I had a gift of God, seeing that he wanted to see that gift of God nurtured, seeing that he wanted that gift of God to go forth, and be something, It says in Psalms, he said, bless, O God, O peoples, and make a sound of praise and be heard aloud, abroad. He says, God who keeps us among the living. That was me. He kept me among the living because for sure, many times I could have been dead. Many times, there was so many times. So many accidents, car accidents, people driving me off the road, not even understanding, well, why did that happen? I was on the road going to New York one time, and I'm driving 70 miles an hour, and you're thinking, driving 70 miles an hour. Well, driving 70 miles an hour, somebody rear-ended me. They rear-ended me and drove me off the road. They spun me around. I was in, it was wet, and it was great that it was wet. It spun me around, and it was so unbelievable that I grabbed the wheel and pinned the seat all the way to the back seat. It was so going. God was there, not a scratch, nothing. He protected me. He protected me and took care of me. Over and over and over, I watched that, and I hear it from people's lives, And in Corinthians 1:8-9, it says, he will also confirm to you, keeping you strong, free from any accusation, so that you will be blameless beyond reproach. He's building us up. on the day of Jesus. He's getting us ready for his coming. He's getting us ready, to be spotless. He's getting us ready, to be part, of what's there and what is to come when he comes. He wants us to be, involved in what that is. He says, God is faithful. And boy, do I know that. He's reliable. He's trustworthy, even true to his promise. He said he can be depended on. And through him, you were called into fellowship with him and with his son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. When I first started to become and start to learn really what the knowledge was that I was being destroyed over, I got to make a trip, and God made a way for me to go to Mexico. In fact, I went to Mexico several summers, in the early stages. And in Mexico, I traveled with an evangelist, and we, at that time, we traveled, and in the daytime, we would go out on the streets, and do child evangelism, sing to the children. And then many times we would go into prisons, and I went into, all the prisons in Mexico City, Cuernavaca, Leon, all throughout the prison system. And it was so amazing to see, and you start to realize, that could have been you. In fact, it was me. In some cases, I went to jail. I went to jail 4 times before I was 19. Now here I am in the prisons of Mexico, talking to the different people, that were there. And, at that time it was the 60s. So there were so many of the Americans that were actually in the prison that had gone to jail because of the drugs and stuff that were being imported. And I began to see, God began to really show a gift of God in my life. He began to show, and I would share in the prisons. I would tell them, I would tell them the same things I'm telling you, how God, would save me, how he would protect me, how he would be always there. At the time I didn't know he was always there, but he was always there, and we would just go throughout all the prisons and share and see the power of God come and see these men, I'd play basketball with them. We'd sing, we'd do different things, I even tried to play soccer with some of them, which was kind of crazy because I can't play soccer at all, but just being there with them, well, that led into a lot of what I do today here. I go to the jails here and into the county jail and the prison and do the same thing, share. I don't play soccer, I don't play basketball with them, but we share because we want them to know there's a keeping power of God in their life. And we want them to know that he's working for them, just like every one of you. He's working for you to try to help you to be something, in the midst of it. Jude says, to those who are called of God, God's chosen ones, the elect, the dearly loved by God, the Father, he has kept, he's secured, he has set apart you for Jesus Christ. May mercy and peace and love be multiplied in you, filling your heart with the spiritual well-being and serenity experienced by those who walk closely to God. That's why God's keeping power is there. It's there, to be experienced. His mercy's there. His mercy was there for the Israelites. In spite of their grumbling, he still fed them. He still brought manna to them. He still brought water to them besides their complaining. He still brought, he brought everything to them. They had everything they needed, yet they still labored there. And that's, I tell this many, many times, but it's still true. I could never understand how could those Israelites be in that desert 40 years. Because the journey is just simply an 11-day journey. And then one day I woke up and realized, I started this journey over 40 years ago. I came out of drugs over 40 years ago, and I labored for 40 years or more just trying to understand what it was simply to submit to the will of God, and then, it's only been coming to this church, the Word of Faith Fellowship. When I came here, I was a rebellious person. I walked in the church. I had my bleached jeans. I had my Hawaiian shirt. I had my hair, my beard. I had, I dressed up. I put a sport coat over my blue jean jacket. My blue jean shirt. So I thought that was dressing up at the time, and I came in. Yeah, and I experienced this love that I hardly had ever seen in my life, and I watched that love slowly over the years, the love of God melt the rebellion, and just, begin to take it apart, begin to show me who I really was, what I shared the last program. It was Jesus, getting to know Jesus. Getting to know the knowledge that lack of almost destroyed me. But it didn't destroy me because God was there. And God's been there for so many of us. He's been there to help us. He's been there to see us step by step by step. It's unbelievable. I've watched, the different ones, that became friends of mine that just at every moment they were there for me. At every moment of a need, they were there. They were there just being there for me. And I am so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for them being there for my family. I have two children. I have a son and a daughter. And I don't know where they would be. I don't know where they would be at all, because they would have grown up under me, and they got the privilege of being brought up in the house of God, a house of God that wasn't just a religious institution sitting there going to church, and not meaning anything. No, it changed my life, and it formed their very life. It formed their very being. And I watched them, and I see them today. Now they have children, and they're bringing their children up in the house of God. And it's my wife and I every night, we were so grateful. We're so thankful to see how the keeping power of God in my life, but in her life as well, brought us to this point, brought us to a fellowship, that it says, may mercy and peace and love be multiplied to you, filling your heart with spiritual well-being, serenity experienced by those who walk closely to God. That's what it was. I'm being filled. My heart's being filled, with a spiritual well-being. The rebellion, is getting less. It's so much far different that, most people, they go, you're not the same person. You don't realize how bad you were until people start telling you. And then you start looking back and you go, you know what? I was pretty bad, wasn't I? So much, it's changed. So much, water, as they say, is going under the bridge. I look at my life and I say, thank you, Jesus, that you saw fit, to pick me out, to allow me. Because I look at my family, and many times not my sons and not my grandchildren, but I look at my family and no one's serving God. I look at, they're not serving God. Yet I was picked out that I could be in this place, that I could experience that spiritual well-being and serenity. It says in 1 Peter, and really this is what the whole, keeping power of God is. And it says, blessed, gratefully praised and adorned be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundance and boundless mercy has caused us to be born again. That is, born and reborn from above, spiritually transformed, renewed, set apart for his purpose, to be an ever-loving hope, a confident assurance through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, born anew into an inheritance which is imperishable, beyond the reach of change, undefiled, unfading, reserved in heaven for you, who are being protected, shielded by the power of God through your faith for salvation that is ready to be revealed for you in the last times. In this rejoice greatly, even though now for a little while, if necessary, you've been distressed by various trials, so that the genuineness of our faith, which is much more precious than gold, which is perishable, even though tested and purified by fire, may be found to be a result in your praise and glory and honor and revelation of Jesus Christ. I mean, that's what it is. He says, who are being protected, shielded by the power of God through our faith and salvation. I mean, he knew us. He knew us. It says, the devil was positioned to steal it. The devil was there to try to take it, but he knew it. And in his mercy, he protected us. He put it beyond reach and change. He allowed it to be undefiled and unfailing. He allowed it to be reserved for us in heaven, being protected. That's where I'm so grateful. I'm grateful, looking around again and just seeing. I don't understand. I don't understand people. They were given so much. I've spent 30 years just here at this church, let alone the 40 plus years that I sang, trying to come out of all the very things that they're trying to go find. Some of the people, some people leave the church and they think, oh, it's like the Israelites. The manna is not sufficient. The manna, which is heavenly bread, the manna, which is spiritual food, the food that they get on a regular basis, the very food that allows them to be able to stand, that allows them to really walk upright in God, they reject it. Just like the Israelites said. They forgot the ways of God. They rejected the ways of God. And like I said, I'm fighting to get away from all the things that's drawing them. I fought for 40 years to get away from the things that I spent many years putting in myself, and now, I'm grateful to see, so how much is done and been done, in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. I think about a friend of mine that is very close to me. And I think of the price that he paid for many, many people in his life. And I see an example, in him, that just so, touched my heart, because he was such an example for me. And I watched him, the whole time that I was here, and I watched what he did. And, you begin to see the power of God in people, and you begin to see how they gave everything up. They gave their whole lives up for others, and still giving it up for others. And today he's giving it up for others. And for that, I'm a very grateful man. I'm a grateful man that I know that man. And I'm grateful for the gift of God in him. And I pray for him daily. And I thank Jesus for him. Thank you today. Thanks that I can be here. Thanks. If you want to see more, go to wordoffaithfellowship.org. They're recorded there. Or come here every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 8:30 and see people like myself who have something to share with you. Thank you again.